Okay, so today we're going to talk about biochemistry, macromolecules, aka the biochemical families. And they would probably start singing, "We are family." Um, I don't know why I did that. Anyway, so you guys remember talking about the hierarchy of life. We started at atoms, um, and I talked about that in the last video, and then I talked about molecules. So we're going to start talking about macromolecules. And macromolecules are what make up um, the biochemical families. I almost said biomedical. That is not right. Okay, so biochemistry. Carbon is the backbone of all organic molecules, and macromolecules are just bigger molecules, but in this sense, when we're talking about biochemical families, we're talking about organic molecules. And when a chemist says organic, they're talking about a carbon-based chemical. We're not saying like no GMOs in my organic banana is organic. We're saying like carbon-based chain organic, because that's what organic means. Biochemistry is a tiny portion of organic chemistry. And biochemicals are what we call polymers. And polymers are essentially chains of molecules, chains of monomers. And a monomer is one small molecule that makes up a polymer. So you can see that little diagram there showing that monomers make up a chain of polymers. Okay. So the first one we're going to talk about is carbohydrates. So every time I think about carbohydrates and carbo load, I think about Michael Scott. And before his 5K fun run race for the cure, he eats fettuccine alfredo. Now, to carbo load, you're supposed to eat it the night before. He stuffs it down his throat literally right before the race, so he ends up feeling terrible. But essentially, carbo loading is eating it beforehand because it is a means of energy storage, carbohydrates, and it's a short-term energy storage that you can use for something like a run. Okay, so carbohydrates are essentially sugars, or anything that ends with an OSE, like glucose, is a sugar, and it's a carbohydrate. And starches are a chain of sugars. And so if you look there at the bottom, so sugars are a simple chain or rings of carbon. They are monosaccharides or disaccharides. So the monomer, the one, like we talked about before, the one molecule is a monosaccharide. That's what it's called. And starches are polysaccharides. So they're a chain of monosaccharides. So if you're thinking back to that original model that I showed you, I'm going to pull it back up. Okay, so this is a monosaccharide right here, and this is for carbohydrates only. So monosaccharide, and this is a polysaccharide. Two of them together would be a disaccharide, but this is a polysaccharide, okay? So let's go back. And most of the time, or all carbs have this formula, CXH2XOX. And so that's basically saying, say if we talk about glucose, C is 6, H is 12, which is 2X. So if X is 6, H is 12 because it's 2X, and then O is 6. And they follow that pattern. So when you're looking at something, that's how you can figure out if something is a carb, okay? If it follows that model. And carbohydrates are like a checking account. They're not a savings where you stash the energy storage away and come back to it at a way later date. It is a short-term source of energy storage. And it's something that when you take it in, it is quickly going to be used up the next day or very quickly afterwards. Um, Starches not only provide energy, or are a short-term energy source, they also provide structure, like cellulose. So cellulose in a plant cell actually give it that squared sort of structure in plants. So if you looked at a plant underneath a microscope, you'd see it's kind of got, different cells. That's actually one of the reasons why it was named a cell. That structure is is provided by cellulose. It's provided by starches. And glycogen is what's found in animals. It's found in the muscles of animals, and it's that quick energy that is available just in case kind of a thing. So if we need to use our fight or flight um, natural reactions, that's where the energy comes from. It comes from glycogen, which is a starch. All right. So again, this is on the left here, you have sugars or monosaccharides, okay? And this is what the molecule looks like. And then on the right, we have a starch or a polysaccharide. If it was just two of these, it would be a disaccharide, but it's three or more is a polysaccharide, okay? All right, the second biochemical family we're going to talk about today, we're just going to talk about two, so this is the last one. We're going to talk about lipids. Lipids are fats, waxes, and oils. They are long-term storage. So in that banking metaphor, they are the savings account, okay? They are the long-term energy stores. They are there for a long time, and they are tough to get rid of. So if you're trying to lose that extra fat at all, um, they're hard to get rid of because it's that long term. Seals, like this cute little dumpling over here, um, has blubber. They have a lot of lipid and fat storage that actually keep them insulated and help them stay alive. So it's not that pesky thing that we wish we didn't have that's really unhealthy. Actually, it can be very healthy. It's very healthy for the seal to be plump like that so that it can stay warm. It's very healthy for us to have a certain amount of fat so that we can stay healthy. Um, the monomer of a lipid is a fatty acid. Okay. The polymer, so the chain is triglycerides, and it's three fatty acids attached together. Um, Lipids still have carbon and hydrogen, like our model for carbohydrates, but it has a lot less oxygen. And it's a close relation to carbs. So once you burn off the carbs, all the carbs in your system, you dip into your lipids. You dip into that long-term storage, kind of like a checking account. Once I use all the money in my checking account, which I shouldn't, you dip into your savings account. Carbohydrates can be easily converted into lipids. And this is why low-carb diets became so popular. Um, they were told to eat a lot of sugar, but a lot less fat, and that should mean that they're losing weight. But you don't burn carbs, but if you, excuse me, so if they were told that, if you still eat a lot of sugar, a lot of carbohydrates, but you don't eat any fat, you don't eat any lipids, you don't eat any oils or fats, that you should be losing weight. But if you don't burn carbs, you'll store those carbs as lipids because they'll be converted to lipids and you'll store them as lipids. And you won't lose any of the fat because all the carbs that you're not burning off are being changed into lipids and stored. Okay. All right. So these are what lipids look like. Sorry, that E is not supposed to be there, but I'll talk about that when we get to it. So, a saturated fatty acid is a fatty acid that cannot be added any more hydrogen to. If it's all hydrogen out, that means it is saturated. Saturated means single bonds. So you can see here, carbon is combined with hydrogen by single bonds. And carbon to carbon is all single bond, single bond, single bond, single bond. Okay? I know you're noticing this over here. So what this is a functional group. Okay? The end is a double, and that only signifies that this is an organic compound and that it's a functional group. Okay, so we look at that to say, oh, this is a fatty acid. But the rest of the bonds are single bonds, which are telling us it is single and satisfied. So it can't have any more hydrogen, and it is happy that way. So satisfied, saturated, kind of to help you remember that if it has all single bonds, it is saturated. So this one underneath it is unsaturated. As you can tell, there's a double bond there. So that's just signifying your functional group and your other functional group. So again, those are the functional groups there, and that this is a organic compound. Right here, you can notice in the orange is a double bond and this little kink here. So we're seeing, okay, this is unsaturated because I could break this double bond and I could stuff more hydrogens in there. It is not satisfied. You could fit some more hydrogens in there. So it is an unsaturated fatty acid. Okay? Now on the right, over here, we have a triglyceride. This is our polymer of our lipids. Okay? So you can see the backbone right here underneath the E. It is a E, something that can help you remember that it's a triglyceride is that it looks like an E, triglyceride. There's an E there, okay? So you can see the backbone. The backbone is the glycerol, okay? And then each of the little lines of the E here are the fatty acid chain, okay? We have our functional groups there signifying we're a fatty acid, okay? And the lines of the E are the chains, okay? And so that one's saturated, right? Single bonds, single and saturated, single and satisfied. That's saturated. This one, on the other hand, is not because, as you can tell, it has a double bond, so it is unsaturated.